your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday, the 31st of July 2016. And again, welcome to the madness that is planet Earth, because again, there's loads of things that are going on, loads of things that are happening, and it just seems to be getting silly all the time. Loads and loads of things going on. But anyway, look, you know, there's so much going on, we can't even talk about it. But there's a few things we're going to be talking about tonight, and filling you in on things that happened during the week. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels this evening.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, the phone number again, 046 927 1212. If you want to ring in and ask some questions to our guest this evening. Again, if you want to ring in from outside the Republic of Ireland, as we say every week, it's 0035396. Hang on. I've forgotten the phone number. No, it's not. It's 046 927 1212, and it's 00353. Ahead of that, if you're ringing in from I know it's on the page. It's actually on a page in front of me, and I still mess it up. It's my nerves.
That's okay.
It's my nerves.
That's okay. No problem.
Anyway, OYMradio.com is the website, and you can log in there. You can see all the social media links to Twitter, Facebook, Skype, email, etc., etc. There's also links there to the YouTube interviews and the YouTube channel. You also have the players on there, a link to the chat room. We're going to be monitoring the chat room there. So big hi to everybody who's already logged in there. And also People's Internet Radio, we're going to be monitoring the chat room over there as well for questions for our guest this evening.
We have a packed show this evening. We have a great guest on. The lady is Maureen McGrath, good Irish name there. And she's a therapist and counsellor for couples regarding relationships and sexual matters. And we'll be talking to Maureen in depth. We've already received questions in to ask Maureen. That's how interesting this subject matter is going to be. So, but we're going to be bringing Maureen in a few minutes. But before we do that, there's a few things that we have to talk about, and Steve's going to start us off there.
I'm going to kick us off, yes. Richard Cumbers of the Pain Genie is going to be doing training in Birmingham, in the Buddhist Centre in Birmingham. That's the 12th and 13th of August. And Richard has contacted us and asked us just to make an announcement that anyone who wants to go and mentions that they're an OYM listener will receive training half price. So half price training, that is from Richard Cumbers and the Pain Genie. Again, Birmingham Buddhist Centre on the 12th and 13th of August.
Brilliant. Yes. And you're taking number two.
I'll take number two. And speaking of the Pain Genie, we actually know someone who is selling their Pain Genie and has contacted us during the week. Pain Genies, as anyone knows, are generally in and around €600. But the gentleman in question, he needs cash in a flash, basically, and the Pain Genie is on offer for €300. Yes, €300. That's an absolute bargain. I believe it is still within its 12-month warranty, so it is quite a bargain. So if anyone is interested in the Pain Genie, please contact us here, info@oymradio.com, and we'll pass on your details.
Brilliant stuff. Now, as you know, we did a fundraiser for sleeping bags for the homeless, and we received fantastic donations, well above and beyond what we thought we would get, and we managed to get 210 sleeping bags. Now, they came in last Monday, just after the show, and brilliant. Steve did a great job. He sorted everything out there, and we got the delivery down to Aisling, who is the coordinator for County Meath for the You're Not Alone charity. And then on Friday, I went down with Aisling just to see what went on and how the charity worked, and just to see exactly how difficult things are down in Dublin with the homeless and everything else. And it was I'll tell you that it was some experience. It really makes you humble for what you have. But we will be talking about that in a few minutes. And we did audio interviews, which we're going to play later on the show. We didn't do video because they felt that they didn't want people appearing on the video, they didn't want to show faces, so we just thought the audio interviews would be actually better. So we will be playing that later on. So again, everybody who donated to the fundraiser, you know who you are. A big thank you for that. It makes a hell of a difference, but I'll be touching base on that shortly. Steve, how's your week?
Yeah, I have to say, in relation to the sleeping bag issue, yeah, it is going to make a big difference to a lot of people, and it's only a small token. It really is only a small token from the OYM team. I'm going to say the team. That includes everyone who listens in and tunes in and has made donations or has even just popped a question in the chat box. Everyone is part of the team, and you know, I mean, I spoke with Aisling as well, and Aisling told me some harrowing stories of, you know, stuff that she has come across on her travels, where she goes down on the Friday and they go down with the soup and the sandwiches and the food and the provisions to help out these families who have found themselves on hard times, mostly due to the banks, I might add. Well, a lot due to the banks and evictions. And I have to say, some of the stories that she told me, you know, it was something that you couldn't make up. And they were horrible to hear, to think that another human being was going through something like that. So again, we just made a small token. We did what we could, because even in the summer here in Ireland, it does rain, and you know, it can be a little bit cool at night. And you know, if we can keep another human being warm, then fantastic. And a big shout out to everyone who donated, as Alan mentioned. The only other thing really on my list is I was excited. Delighted and excited.
Are you still excited?
I am still excited about the interview this evening with Maureen. And I was telling some colleagues in work, that we were going to be interviewing Maureen, and Alan had forwarded me over one of Maureen's TED Talks. So I watched the TED Talk and I forwarded it on to a couple of my colleagues. One of my colleagues was quite interested, and let's just say we have some questions. And again, like, it's completely anonymous, so the question will be mixed in with the rest of the questions, so it's not, you know, no one will be identified. But yeah, we're all kind of looking forward to this, because it's kind of a first for OYM. Normally we cover a load of different subjects, but we've never really touched on sex
and relationships.
And
it can be, being Ireland the way it is, could be a taboo subject to certain people, and we'll be talking about the sex and the matrix, and people stepping outside, and when the relationships change because one of the people wake up and the other one stays asleep, and we'll be going through the whole lot. Yeah,
so it's gonna be good. I'm really looking forward to it. Just want to get down to the nitty gritty. So yeah, I've nothing else to say. How was your week?
Right. Okay. Well, you know, we will be getting Maureen on in just a few minutes, but just to suffice to say, as I say, I was down on Friday with Aisling, seeing how they charity work, and just fair play to them. I mean, fantastic people and what they do. It's all voluntary, you know, like nobody's getting paid. They're just doing it off their own back. And, you know, when everything got packed up, you know, the main thing you kind of realise is that, well, I could go home and I could get into my bed and, you know, and not worry about anything. But these people who were there, who came to the table, who got some food and stuff like that, they have to find a door, you know, to sleep in. That's their bed. And if they go to a hostel, well, if they do get a bed in a hostel, sometimes there could be a little bit of trouble, so sometimes they stay away from the hostel. So it's just brilliant work that they do on the with the charity, and we'll be playing the interviews later on. So, and just harrowing what goes on, but fair play, as I say, to the volunteers. They do a brilliant job.
Yeah, can you just mention what you told me there this morning about the homeless man? This was horrible.
That's on the list.
Oh, it's on the list.
We're going to talk about that
right,
later.
Sorry.
Before we do the interviews, we're going to be doing that. That's all part of the plan, part of the unscripted script. Anyway, let's get our guest in, because we have loads of stuff to talk about with Maureen. Now, before we get Maureen in, Steve's going to give us a rundown of the bio and Maureen's background.
Yeah, Morin McGrath is an award-winning broadcaster and host the Sunday night sex show on News Talk 980 CKNW in Vancouver in Canada. She is the author of a book, Sex and Health, Why One Can't Come Without the Other. She's a sought-after speaker and did a TED Talk this year. That's the one we spoke of earlier. Maureen blogs about female sexuality at 50 Shades of Pink and for the Huffington Post. She is passionate about raising awareness about male violence against women, and her website, backtothebedroom.ca. She's also a registered nurse in a private practice in Vancouver.
Fantastic. Good evening, Maureen. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming on the show. Much appreciated. I know there's so much that we're going to get through tonight and talk about. And as I said to you before we went live, I can see a part two being required. But let's take it from the top. Is there anything else you want to add to your bio? Anything else you want to tell us before we get into the subject of relationships and sex and everything else?
No, I think you covered most of it. I do a bit of sex research as well, and so I've been doing that for about 14 years. So a lot of the information that I may impart is based on the evidence, and as opposed to anecdotal, although anecdotal can be very helpful as well. But I rely on the science in sexual matters.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I have a list. Very rarely do I have a list, but I do have a list here. And a number of things are on the list, and we just mentioned to you there before we went live. Now, let's start off with this one. The survey that was done in the UK a couple of years ago, where 100 men and 100 women were interviewed, and they were asked, are you happy in your relationship? 50% of women said no. 52% of men said no. So that's nearly half the population are not happy. And the excuses they gave were either that I'm in the relationship for the kids because they want to leave because of the kids, or it's better than being single, or you can't leave because of financial reasons, and those are two other reasons which they gave as well. Now, if that's the state of the way things are at the moment in relationships, because we know long-term relationships, things change. And one of the things that we have come across as well with long-term relationships is that being alternative media, people sometimes one half the relationship wake up to they step outside the matrix. They realise that the world is not the way it is, but the partner stays in there. So they grow apart because their interests change. And obviously that causes conflict in a relationship. Now, if the other partner who doesn't wake up accepts it and just go, oh, that's nice, and lets them get on and do it, that's fine. But if there's conflict there all the time over it, then obviously the relationship's not going to be very happy. So I'm not too sure where we can kick off with, but one of the things that you talk about on your TED Talk is, maybe we talk about the neighbours, is that people perceive that the neighbours are having a hell of a lot more sex than we are. And that's just a perception. So let's start off there, and then we'll go with the flow.
Well, this is one of the issues, is that sex is such a taboo subject. Nobody's talking about it. Therefore, we're all making up all of these assumptions in our head. Canada did a national newspaper survey, and it revealed that 75% we had 10,000 respondents. They were mostly married men. 70% were married men. 75% were happy in their relationship, but more than 52% were dissatisfied with their sex lives. And so sex is the tie that binds, and it's often the problem, the root of the problem in a relationship, that mismatched desire, that desire discrepancy in a couple. And it can happen either way, or in a same-sex couple as well. So one person is naturally going to have higher desire than the other, but it just depends what that difference is. And so that can cause a lot of problems in a relationship. Of course, today's world, finances, it's expensive to live. Most women are working inside and outside of the home today. It's difficult to divorce. It's, to divide the assets, and you may end up owning a house together and then looking at the reality of renting individually and not in a different neighborhood altogether. So that can also impact it as well. So because we don't talk about it, and we're just assuming that the Joneses are having more sex, when more than likely the Joneses are having way less sex. We see our neighbors divorcing, and everybody's so surprised because we thought they were the perfect couple. So we give off this perception of perfection as well, and nobody talks about sex or the issues that occur in a relationship. I mean, a long-term relationship these days is anything longer than 3 months. The heat and the passion can diminish after 3 months to a couple of years, and you get into the routine of raising the kids and working, and, life is difficult and challenging, and people are exhausted, and that's the number one reason for low sexual desire in a woman. But men can experience that as well. So it's that matched sexual desire, and you have to work at it, that makes for some of the better relationships.
Yeah, the research that I've been doing over the years on this, and as I say, I have a neighbour of mine who's also involved in education research and psychology, and we've talked for hours when we talk about this subject. And the two things that we find that cause the most problems in relationships is sex and money. And it's just funny that your book is also in relation to that and referring to that. Now, I do think, as I said before the show, that sex and money, I think, sex especially is a byproduct, because I think if you fancy your partner and you love your partner and you want your partner and you lust after them, then sex is going to be a byproduct. It's going to be the next thing from there, because it's going to happen. Now, sorry?
People, you may lust after your partner and you may want your partner, you may be in love with them and all of that, but you may have experienced something like sexual abuse as a child, or you may not be comfortable being fully vulnerable, or you may have body image issues. So all of those issues can occur despite the fact that you are crazy about somebody, but you may not have good sexual self-esteem.
What do you put it down to if people are not very good at communication regarding sex in the bedroom?
Well, so few people are good at communication regarding sex in the bedroom, and that's because it's such a taboo subject. We educate on a fear-based model. We say you're going to get pregnant, you're going to get a sexually transmitted infection, sex is dirty, sex is bad. That's all a boy or a man wants from you is sex. If they French kiss you, that means they want more. And especially girls are educated this way. Boys are educated through pornography or through stories, shared stories about how many conquests they've had. So it's a wonder that we do not communicate appropriately around sex. We don't teach people to say, tell somebody what feels good for you. Sex is about pleasure. The organs, the sex organs, are really there for reproduction, but also for pleasure and intimacy and love and passion. But, what may feel good for one person does not feel good for someone else. And so somebody may be entering a relationship and their last girlfriend loved a certain thing, but this one doesn't. And so we're afraid to say, I don't like that, because then we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. So I think it really goes back to the education that people are provided. And when you ask people, very few people were educated about pleasure, and very few people were educated properly around sex, or that sex is an okay subject to discuss. Just like finances. People are afraid to talk about finances. They come to finances with very different backgrounds. And so it's difficult to talk about it, to plan it out. We have to apply the same model to sex.
Wow. And obviously when you talk about the next door neighbour and everything else, one of the things that you said is that you've come across relationships, and this really throws the spanner in the works, is that you have people that say, I love my partner, and I want to be with them. I won't say him because it could be male or female, but I don't want any physical interaction in the relationship. That just sounds off the scale.
It's so common. And people impose fidelity on their partner, and I ask, is that fair? Because I had a patient in my office this week. He'd been married 25 years. He had not had sex with his wife for 10 years. And I said, and I bet if you went outside of the relationship, she would be very upset. He said, she would kill me. And it's that perception again. We want the neighbors to think our lives are perfect. We hold people hostage within these sexual norms and these sexual mores that society has imposed upon couples. And yet this man feels undesirable, unloved, unattractive, lonely. And there we go with the loneliness, because that relates to health. Loneliness increases vascular resistance and elevates blood pressure. You're, more likely to die earlier if you suffer loneliness. And we look at loneliness in the geriatric population, and that is a risk factor for dying earlier. So being in a committed relationship without intimacy is a great health risk. And also, people who are in those relationships are at risk for chronic masturbation, pornography, stress, infidelity, and or divorce when sex is not a part of an intimate relationship. Cheating is common, but, a lot of people feel that women don't cheat. But who do you think men cheat with? Men cheat. They cheat with other men, for sure, but they cheat with women for the most part. And yet women, because we have this sort of Madonna complex for women, oh, women are good, women are pure, women are sweet, women can't like sex, and don't ever say you do, because we'll slut shame you if you do. But how could women possibly ever cheat? Which is, denial on steroids. But of course women cheat. Women have sexual desire as well. So there are so many misconceptions about sexuality, sexual health, sex matters, and sex as it relates to men and women and they.
Well, this kind of, you talk about men can separate out the emotion of from sex, where women have to feel some kind of emotion to have sex. Does that still stand true, do you think?
No, I think intimacy is important to men equally as it is women, because I've learned that from my patients who had prostate cancer and had their prostates removed and had erectile dysfunction. They actually missed the intimacy. That was the number one thing they missed, was intimacy. Often when men purchase sex from prostitutes or sex workers, they purchase the ability to lie on top of another human being. They're purchasing intimacy. They're not always purchasing sex. We also have intimacy coaches here in Vancouver, sensuality coaches. They're coming. So men equally desire intimacy, but again, they've been tarred with this brush that says you can't like intimacy. Women have cornered the market on that, and women can't like sex. We like intimacy. So it's misconception once again.
Okay. In society, the way society is now, we have all the glamour magazines and Hollywood and everything else. How far detached is society compared to what's happening in reality?
It's so far from the truth. And more so is pornography is so far from the truth. That's the number one industry in the world. They make the most money of everybody. And so it's not necessarily what we see. And it's unfortunate because that's what boys are learning. Because boys can have access to iPads at the age of 2. I see 2-year-olds navigating an iPad quite easily. So they're, at the age of 9 on average, boys between the ages of 9 and 11 have actually seen pornography. But we don't address it. We don't talk about it. We don't want to mention it. We're embarrassed that our son has perhaps looked at pornography, or even when our kids are teenagers, we forget that we were teenagers at one point and we self-explored, and all of that is healthy and normal. And yet when we find our son masturbating, or, we punish them, or we're embarrassed about it. And so there's so much shame around sex, and it's shrouded in shame. And that's the cloak that we need to remove from sex, so that we have a healthier world, a better world, a happier world, and that people end up with the people that they want to be with. And maybe it's not forever. Maybe it's not 70 years, because we're all living to 100 today. Maybe we look at that a little bit differently as well, as long as it remains safe and consensual and mutual.
Now, one of the things we talked about when we originally hooked up was we talked about givers and takers, and we've mentioned this on the show before about energy and the difference between givers and takers. And as you quite rightly said, I was generalizing with the givers because people can be too much of a giver where they get walked on like a floor mat. But the whole idea of the givers and takers, which I was referring to, was energy. And if you go into a partner who's a giver, they'll use that extra energy, where a taker will just keep on taking. And then people have their tolerance level, and they get to a certain stage and think, because if you ask a taker to do something, they're always moaning, and the giver ends up going, oh, I'll do it myself. And then they reach their tolerance level and they go, look, I've had enough of this relationship. I'm not getting anything out of this. So, this is it. We're splitting up. So the taker goes away and he realizes, oh, damn, all them things that the giver was doing, I have to do them now because the giver's not around. So then the taker comes back and goes, well, listen, I'm sorry what I did, but we'll get back together and I will change. Now, that change might happen for about 2 weeks, but because change takes energy and takers don't like using energy, chances are they'll fall back into their same old routine. What's your experience in counselling with that, with relationships like that?
Well, it's very difficult to change, especially lifelong habits. So it really depends on the age. Insight is the most important aspect. So if somebody has insight and realizes the error of their ways, then there may be a chance. People can take a few steps forward and then several steps back on their path to change. And so I often, when couples come in to see me, I'll often say to them, you're coming in because you're having problems in your relationship, and I want to be upfront with you. This may not end the way you think, that you'll end up with a better relationship and you'll be so happy and all will be fantastic. In fact, this may end up that you go your separate ways, because sometimes that's the best thing for people. The person that they're with can actually be a toxic component of who they are. I've seen many people split up, and I'm not saying I'm a proponent of people splitting up. I'm actually a proponent of people doing the hard work and remaining together. Because I think if you don't do the hard work in this relationship, you're not going to do it in the next relationship, and you're going to bring the same baggage with you. So I really am a proponent that the grass is not greener outside of the relationship. But I think that you have to understand what it is that people can change, what you'll be willing to tolerate of what they'll change. There's some things that would really drive somebody crazy. And so maybe there's 3 things that somebody can change. I mean, somebody cannot change 35 things. It's impossible. It's daunting. With all due respect, especially for men, they can't change. But, if they can take a few steps, make the effort, at least that they're trying, and realize that it's going to take some time, that can be beneficial. It's the best gift you'll ever give to yourself is to make those changes. Or one can give to themselves, is to make those changes, because if they end up in a new relationship and they've never looked at themselves, I'm always leery when I say, so why did your last relationship break up? And they say, well, my husband was this, or my wife was that, she, and she did this, and all the blame is placed on her or him. And I say, well, tell me what your role in it was. And they'll be shocked, and they'll say, my role? Like, no, she was awful. And I say, I'm not interested in what she contributed to the breakup of your relationship. I'm interested in what you contributed to the breakup of your relationship. And that's really hard for a lot of people, because it's so much easier to blame the other person, but it's so much more beneficial when you look at yourself and you say, this is what I did. This is what I could have done better. This is what I don't want to do in my next relationship.
Yeah, it's very hard to do that. And again, as you say, if they do want to get back together, and they have to make the effort, but effort takes energy. And if they really, really want to make a change and make a difference, they will take the energy to do it. But in my experience and what I've seen, that very rarely happens, because they 2-week, 3-week period, and then they go back into their old routine because it takes energy.
That's why you have to understand that it's not going to be a trajectory. It's a gravel road, and you're not going to be able to stay on the perfect path the whole time. So there has to be some forgiveness and some give and take. I have a couple in my practice where he was drinking, and excessively, a little too much. And he was also he was seeking other women outside of the relationship. They had a 6-month-old baby, a 2-year-old, and an older teenager from his previous relationship. So without even talking to this couple, that he did the same thing in his first marriage. This is not new. That the first wife just said, I'm not taking this anymore. Technology wasn't the same as it is today. And apparently this guy was on, every social media website seeking out other women, particular types of women, prominent women, and which would really have brought things down in their life. It would have been public. And they were 2 professionals. So the first wife tolerated it, and then the second did not tolerate it, or tolerated it for a time. And then the second wife tolerated it for a bit, lived in denial for a while, said, oh, my husband does not want to meet you. My husband doesn't. She was sending messages to these women saying, which is very common, it's not about, we'd love to both meet you. Like it went down a very bad path. But the reality was she refused to look at the reality, his drinking, and the fact that he was seeking sex outside of the marriage, because they were not having sex in their marriage. So there were a multitude of problems there. And unless they decided to address it fiercely, nothing was going to change and he was going to be off to his third relationship. So it's those kinds of things. The problems they're difficult. Those are almost insurmountable problems, especially the drinking alcohol excessively. And when you've set up a new business and have new babies and, imagine putting that perception out to the world that how perfect our lives are. Look at our beautiful home. Look at our beautiful children. Look at everything. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. When there's a good chance my husband is seeking sex with you.
Yeah. One of the things you said on your TED Talk, and you said women seek sex outside the relationship for X and men seek sex for outside the relationship for Y. Do you remember what... Can you remember what you said on the talk?
I can. Men seek sex. Men in sexless marriages cheat to remain in that marriage. And this was the case with this gentleman. He wanted to stay in the marriage, but he sought sex outside of it so he could. And women cheat to leave a sexless marriage. This is a generalization. This is not, 100%.
Yeah.
When women leave a marriage, they have grieved it. They have mourned it, especially if they have been cheating. They are ready to go. Everybody is surprised at it, but they have processed it. So they go and cheat with intention. That's kind of how they can deal with it. This is how women were socialized. We're socialized to be sneaky, secretive. That's also why women are never caught cheating, because we know how to do it, quite frankly. We know how not to get caught. But men, leave a phone without a password protection. They leave things, they leave credit card bills that, the wives take care of the finances and they put a hotel on a credit card bill. So men just aren't as smart about it because they weren't socialized that way. So men commonly will want to remain in the marriage, and women are almost okay with that. If they have a large dose of denial around it as well. So they may know that their husband is cheating. They know their marriage is sexless, but they don't want the neighbors to find out. And so they will stay with that person, risking their health, quite frankly, because there's also a lot of risk with sexually transmitted infections, especially men who have not completed their families or young couples who haven't completed their families. And if the man is cheating or seeing sex workers or cheating with other women who may have herpes or may have chlamydia, trichomonas, they can bring that home, and they don't realize that because we're not educated properly around sexually transmitted infections either. 1 point, herpes. The herpes virus sheds 14 days after the lesions have healed. Very few people know that. So they have sex when they have no lesions, but maybe 3 days after they've had a finished breakout. So this is why talking about this subject, and I applaud you guys for bringing this to your airwaves. This is another reason this is such an important subject, because that woman could go on to have a baby and her husband has exposed her to herpes, and then the baby is at great risk if she has a vaginal delivery and she ends up getting herpes or has a herpes outbreak at the delivery. The baby is at great risk for brain damage.
That's incredible. I just wanted like to say actually that how we found you, Maureen, was just one of these things. It was the universe doing what it does, because thanks to a link that a lady called Paula sent us, it was from a radio host over in Canada, and we were listening to this radio host, and he happened to play your TED Talk on his show, and I thought, now there's a lady who we'd love to get on the show to talk to about this. And then obviously we contacted you, and fair play, you got back to us straight away and said, yeah, you'd love to come on the show. So the universe was doing its thing. So fair play to the universe, and thanks for coming on, because this is this stuff we have to get out there. We have to let people know what's really happening as opposed to what they're reporting on the TV, because reality and what's going on in the Hollywood and these glamour mags it's completely different. But Steve has a few questions there. We're going to go up to the questions now, and we'll go to the questions. Steve.
Yeah, good information so far, Maureen. A lot of people enjoying it on the chat room. The first question I have is from Joan. And Joan is wondering, why is it that some women, when they get older, i.e. into their 40s and 50s, they speak of sex as if it's obnoxious. Joan says she doesn't understand this at all. I mean, do you find that, was that a lot, or does that not happen very often?
I find, if I understand her question, her description correctly, I do find people women dismiss sex, especially as they get into their 40s, 50s, 60s. They've had enough. Many women will say to me, if I never have sex again, it won't be too soon. I had a patient in my office this week, and she had a prolapse. So her bladder had fallen down, and a particular treatment that I needed to provide to her, I had to ask her if she was sexually active, and because one way would render her unable to ever have sex again, and the other would not. And she said, "Oh no, I'm not sexually active." And I said, and I asked her what the reason was, and she said, because her husband had erectile dysfunction. And I said, well, there are treatments for erectile dysfunction. And she said, oh no, please don't tell him. He was in the waiting room. And she said, please don't tell him. No, I don't want to have sex again with him. And so,
Wow.
How fair is that we render somebody, we really impose fidelity, on somebody, or shut down somebody's sex life because we don't want to share health knowledge with the person that we love and that we're playing tennis with and walking with. He was actually the one who found me for her. That's how gracious of a person he was, because this bladder prolapse was causing her so many issues in life. And so women, because I think it goes back again to they're not taught about pleasure. Only about a third of women experience orgasm. Women are taught, get it over with. Think of England. We're given so many messages, and we're not educated about the health benefits, the intimacy, the connection, and, how good it is for you and how good it feels. So I do find that women, they're tired, they have a negative attitude about it. It's very common, but also a very common thing that occurs for women in the perimenopausal years, menopausal and postmenopausal, is vaginal dryness. And so sex may hurt. And they don't want to say that because they're embarrassed about it. And so personal moisturizers are a great treatment option for women, or low dose localized estrogen therapy. So there are treatments for women who have vaginal dryness. They may have low sexual desire because they are having this vaginal dryness, and couples don't talk about it. It feels like sandpaper, or it feels like they'll tell me, but they won't tell anybody. And doctors don't know the treatments commonly. So there are issues that may occur as well for women. But I think Joan is absolutely correct. A lot of women find sex obnoxious, or if they're in a relationship, a long-term relationship, they may find that their partner always wanting sex from them, will drive them around the bend.
Can I just jump in there on that couple that you said where the wife said don't tell the husband because he has erectile dysfunction? To me, that's not love and that's not respect. That's not a relationship.
Not at all. Yet they had their version of a relationship. They were connected in other ways. I could see their connection. He was a loving man. It's this sex thing. It's like not liking pepper. It's no, don't tell him that there's flavored peppers. It's a very strange phenomenon. She wanted to stay with him. They'd been married for years, 40, 50 years. And yet she was like, no, please don't tell him. Then I would have to have sex with him. And that is probably a good description of that obnoxious behavior that women have around sex as age.
I totally agree. And to me, you're better off being single, because if a woman treats you that way, or a man treats you that way, then it's not a relationship.
And we're responsible for our own health as well. And one thing that had very little surprises me, but one thing that surprises me is the fact that men are so embarrassed about erectile dysfunction. But then again, I don't have a penis, so I don't know. I know that is attached to manhood. But men are really embarrassed about it, and they don't often seek treatment for it. So this man could go out, just as much as he found treatment for his wife, why can't he find treatment for himself? He knows that I'm in the sexual health field. He knows that I'm a sex therapist. He knows he could come to me. So, what's that about? Sex is about power. Is he having sex outside of the relationship? You don't know.
Well, I was just going to say, with a lot of men, it's just stiff upper lip. You don't say anything. You don't say that you have a problem. You don't tell your problems to anybody. And it's because of that affects a lot of men. And I will say to a lot of men who are listening in and tuning in, look, if you do have any issues or any problems, go to your doctor and speak to your doctor about it, because you're only going to persecute yourself and you're only going to get depressed over it. So deal with it.
If you don't get the answers from your doctor, because doctors are not educated about two things in medical school, bladder health and sexual health. And they also bring to it their religious beliefs and their upbringing, their education and their attitude about sex. And so people are not comfortable often going to speak to their doctor. They may play golf with their doctor. So they're embarrassed about it. But I'm certain Ireland has sex therapists, or people can email me, sextalk@cknw.com. At least I can lead them in the right direction or give some guidance to their physician. But to see a sex therapist, there's no shame in that. It's a very helpful way to deal with health matters, because these are emotional, physical, spiritual, health matters, and financial too.
Yeah, totally. Steve, you got more?
Yeah, lots more questions. I find with a lot of men, well, I don't find that with a lot of men. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But a lot of the time it's fear with a man. I mean, some people say he won't go. He's a martyr. He won't go to the doctor. Because a woman. I find even with my wife, as we get older, as we grow older together. Because I get up every morning and I go to work, if I'm feeling off on a day or an evening and I'm not myself, she gets concerned and worried, and possibly over concerned and over worried. And a lot of times she thinks that I'm having a problem. I could be having an off day, but a lot of times she'll think that there's something more sinister going on. And I believe that with a lot of men, that if they are having, say, erectile dysfunction, then it's not a case of that they don't want to go to the doctor because, they feel less of a man. I think they won't go to the doctor because, well, I'm losing my train of thought. Not because...
The stigma. Would it be the stigma and the whole idea of accepting there's a problem?
No, I think it's more inner-based fear.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to get older. And thanks to the internet, when people are having problems, a lot of people do, wrongly a lot of times, they turn to the internet for a solution. And as you mentioned in your TED Talk, Maureen, and I've seen this on the internet as well, not that I've been looking, that a lot of times certain issues are erectile dysfunction, to name one, but there are other issues that a man may have, and when he looks up to see what it could be, because men like to fix things, and they like to say, I've got this and I'll fix it. And, a lot of times we think that it'll be fixed with a couple of paracetamol. But when you look up erectile dysfunction and you see, as you mentioned in your TED Talk, as I said, that it's like the analogy to the captain flying the plane. If he can't keep the plane in the air, then there's something wrong with the machinery. And a man's machinery is basically his heart. And I think a lot of men would see that and think, oh, no, I'm not going to go to my GP because I feel okay. And what happens if I now go to my GP and he tells me I have heart disease or cardiovascular disease? And I think that's a big problem, I think.
Better that than to suffer a heart attack, which is what I hear quite often from people. When I give presentations, they will come up to me and say, my husband had erectile dysfunction for a year, and then he had a heart attack, and now his life has changed forever. Or people will, they can now. I had a gentleman in my office this week as well, a patient, and he was 5 feet 10 inches tall. He looked a lot taller, but that's because he weighed so much. He weighed 225 pounds, and he was having erectile dysfunction issues. And I said, listen, we can't even address the erectile dysfunction until we get you healthy, in a baseline healthy. His blood pressure was up. It was about 148 over 94, which is too high. You want to be under 120 over 80, that or under. He was very heavy. He was 50 pounds at least overweight when I did his BMI. He had a large abdominal girth. And, he said he'd been married twice as well. And, his second wife had mentioned that she wasn't so attracted to his weight, that he'd put on all this extra weight, and he was living a sedentary lifestyle. And he said, but, I may be hearing it from somebody else. I'm going to go, and he was going to join a particular medical weight loss center that I had advised. But, that's so much better. He was 52 years old. Otherwise, his risk of having a heart attack, a stroke, diabetes are, catastrophic. It's very high. So just better to have that information and to face it and to deal with it than all of a sudden you have a stroke and your life has changed forever.
Oh, absolutely.
But definitely fear plays a role. And I understand that. People don't want to hear they have cancer. They don't want to hear they have a heart attack because it's not easy to be disciplined and to make all of these changes. Even if you think at the end of the road, your sex life is going to be better. Now, I know this guy is not going to need medications. If he loses his weight, increases his exercise, is healthier, takes all of my conservative measure suggestions, he's actually going to have more sexual desire and better erectile function. He does not need Viagra or Levitra or any of the other PDE5 inhibitors. He will not need that. That's what I see commonly in my practice.
Yeah, and we've seen information too that says that Viagra has a lot of negative effects too. That it can damage other parts of the body, and therefore it's really not recommended long term. Do you know anything about that?
No, not necessarily. It's actually a very safe drug, and it's a very good drug, but it has side effects. Like most drugs, it has side effects. And this has side effects because it's increasing blood flow, and it's about blood flow. It increases blood flow everywhere. So people will get headaches or nasal congestions or piloerection, goosebumps, or pounding heart, and they feel uncomfortable with that. But it's about dose and about the different. You can try a different one. You can try daily low dose, Cialis. So there's lots of different choices, but it's actually a very safe drug. But the side effects are the problem. Yeah. And it's expensive.
No, I found a page that I had looked at before, and it was saying long term. This is on a website called livestrong.com, and it says long term use of Viagra has been associated with various problems affecting the auditory, hearing, and visual systems. Loss or decrease of hearing have been reported in association with use of Viagra, and that was some article that was published in 2007.
The thing is, as men age, their hearing goes down, and also they automatically shut it off as well. I'm just kidding.
No, that's true.
I think that's selective hearing. Yeah, we don't listen.
We don't listen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking Viagra, and I'm going to shut you out. No. Or the vision decreases as well. So you'd really have to look at that study and look to see if it met the gold standard for research studies, and to see what age of men they entered into that study. But overall, it's a very safe drug. Unless you're taking it recreationally, it will kick out your own system. So you may have erectile dysfunction. If you don't need Viagra or Levitra or Cialis, if you don't need it, don't take it, because eventually it may lead to you having problems with erection.
I think we have to be careful as well when we say side effect, because we've had Dr. Rima LeBeau on the show and Dr. Lorraine Day, and they would turn around and say, well, there's no such thing as side effects. They're effects, Yeah, and they define that, and they just say, look, there are effects. They're not side effects, they're effects of the drug. And as you say, long-term use is probably not a good thing. But, Steve, you got more questions there for Maureen?
I was kind of struggling there a while ago, Maureen, when I say I was struggling. I wanted to better understand women. And primarily because I'm a married man.
Hang on, this is a 2-hour show. Not
it is. Well, I know.
Not a 2-week show.
We need more hours. But I wanted to kind of better understand, because I've been hearing that as women get older, they do lose interest in sex. And this kind of came upon me because I watched a video from a chap in the US of A called Mark Gungor. He's a pastor, and he done a DVD or a CD. Presentation called Tale of Two Brains, where he discussed the male brain and the female brain, and I learned a lot from that. So I went on kind of just doing some research, because I know men have a healthy interest in sex, and I know sometimes women don't. And I wanted to kind of understand, the ins and outs of it.
Sometimes men don't as well. And sometimes men do not have that healthy interest in sex. They can experience low sexual desire also.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
but men there who are experiencing that they're not, I just don't want them to feel that they're abnormal in some way. But that can happen to men too. But go ahead. I understand your point.
So you just finish your point now.
No, I was just saying then, what I actually did is I have a long drive to work on a daily basis, so I listened to an audiobook from a doctor, again in the US, Luann Brizendine. She'd done a book called The Female Brain. And I have to say, I learned a lot from that in relation to women's cycles and that it's an ongoing thing. And there's so much in the book that I actually learned that I didn't know, and it helped me better understand my wife. I like to think anyway. But there's so much information in it, and it's confusing, because basically what it kind of told me, man is a very simplistic creature. He's very simplistic, but women are very complicated, even down to their brains. And basically, what Luann Brizendine was saying in her study was that women, the whole cycle, it goes from the time you're a teenage girl to basically to the day you die, and it controls all these hormones that are going around the body. Can on a turn of a dime, I suppose, you can go from 0 to 60, from good mood into bad mood. And again, she was saying a lot of it was to do with different chemicals, and obviously there's chemicals in there, and I can't remember, you'll obviously know the one that kind of dictates a woman's sex drive. And I suppose what every man wants to know is, can we get this in the pharmacy? And what's the dose?
There's a drug that's been developed. It's available here in the U.S., ADDY, ADDYI. And when it works on the neurotransmitters of the brain in a woman, but that's not necessarily the reason for low sexual desire in all women. It's one treatment option, and it probably will have more of a placebo effect than anything else. Women are complex, yes, but also I really think it's back to marrying the right person, sustaining love and sex in a long-term relationship, keeping things fresh, that education around keeping the passion alive, the importance of it, having morning sex at least once a week, because it's been scientifically proven that morning sex is great for you. Teaching women about their bodies and health, being less self-conscious, shaking things up, taking a role in it. So I think it's, there's not one treatment for low sexual desire in women. It's multiple treatments, and it's really, you need to look at the problem. And sometimes if the problem is I married the wrong man because my parents wanted me to marry an Irish Catholic boy, that's the problem. And so that's not going to be helped with morning sex, once a week. Yeah. It's not going to be helped with sharing ultimate fantasies with somebody. It's not going to be helped by flirting like you mean it. So you have to I always say regardless, you have to get to the root of the problem. And a tablet is not going to help every woman.
No. And I think people have to be themselves. We talked about this as well, Maureen, and one of the things that people do is when they lack self-confidence or they're insecure, what they do is they put on a mask. So when they meet somebody, whether they're dating or whatever, they put on a mask because they want that person to like them. And we've said before on the show, time and time again, that about the 33% of people will like you, 33% of people won't like you, and 33% will be sitting on the fence. So the people you need to focus on are the people that like you, and the rest, well, they can make up their own mind. But because of insecurity and low self-esteem, maybe, they put on this mask. And then after 6 months of being in a relationship, the person turns around and says, "You're not the same person I met." because they had been putting this mask on all the time, and obviously over time the mask drops, and they realise that they're not the same person. And I've seen that time and time again with people that are, get together after a few months, they split up. And for whatever reason, chances are because they're obviously masking. So the one thing I'd say to people is find your own confidence. Find out who you are. Find out what you like. Don't worry about anybody else. Find out what you like regarding sex and what you like in generally.
Because that's sexual self-esteem. There's self-confidence, and yes, you're absolutely correct. Things get boring. We have the same dates. We have the same sex. Date nights get repetitive. Things become predictable in life. You're dealing with life's issues. But to keep that spark ignited, you need to have sexual self-esteem. You need to understand that it's important. You need to be responsive to each other inside and outside of the bedroom, because that helps for couples to maintain sexual desire. That responsiveness is a type of intimacy that demonstrates when one is truly informed and concerned about the welfare of their romantic partner. I had a couple in my office, and she said they were having lots of troubles, and then finally the last straw was she said, I told him that after he got back from a business trip, I wish his plane had crashed. He could not stay in that relationship. That was the final straw for him. And, it just demonstrates just how deep the troubles were and how there was absolutely no concern. In fact, there was concern. There was hope that something happened that would be the easiest way, would be that something happened to the partner. So there's an intimacy desire paradox, and it's a concept that intimate and familiar relationships kill desire via that need for security. So it clashes with a sense of novelty and uncertainty that is linked with desire. So that's why you want to be responsive outside of the bedroom as well. Foreplay begins long before you enter the bedroom. So these are things that are often linked with increased sexual desire.
Interesting. Steve?
Yeah, I totally agree in relation to the whole foreplay thing. I kind of looked this up before, and yeah, even down to little notes or little texts during the day, that's all it takes for the men out there. That's all it takes is, ring your woman or text your woman, or just leave little notes in our lunchbox, or silly little things that you think are kind of, won't make a damn bit of difference, are really insignificant, do mean a lot to the fairer sex, as I say. But anyway, question. This is kind of a bit of a long-winded one, so I do apologise in advance. But let's just say, Maureen, that a man and a woman married, they're having a healthy sexual relationship, they're married possibly best part of 20 years, and they decide, just as the man hits 40, they decide, we're going to have another baby. Let's go for one more, and then we're finished. They kind of argue about this because the man doesn't want any more. He thought he was finished. The woman kind of goes, no, I want one more. So they agree. They agree to have a baby, and they go through the natural way. And then as soon as the baby is born, the man is very helpful, feeding the baby and doing all the household chores. But then, for no apparent reason, the wife, she just decides that you need to have a vasectomy. I don't want any more children. I'm not willing to use the pill, and you need to have a vasectomy. And this chap is frightened at the idea of going in for an operation because he has heard stories of people who have had vasectomies, and some people who have had them have come out the other side and everything is fine, there's no problem at all, where other people have come out the other side and have been severely depressed because they, at some point in time they felt that they were no longer a man, or they were less of a man because they'd had this done. Now, but either way, let's just say he's afraid to actually have the operation, but he's willing to use other methods of contraception. Now, his wife is adamant that he will not gain access to the promised land unless he has the operation, and until that happens, all bedroom pursuits are on hold. And so far, I think we're maybe a year has gone past, and he still loves his wife, and he still treats her with respect, and he still, tries to show her how much he loves her in the bedroom, but with no reciprocation. And, what advice would you have for that man?
Well, as Oscar Wilde said, everything in the world is related to sex, except for sex. Sex is about power. So this is unhealthy power over somebody, is what he needs to recognize. Having a child, I'll step back a little bit. The desire to have a baby will rev up any woman's sex drive. Having that baby will decrease that woman's sex drive, along with any marital eroticism a couple may have had. I had a couple in my practice who used to go to strip clubs before they were married, and now they have 3 children, 2 jobs. She's exhausted. Not only did they not have sex, no longer can she experience orgasm. So they've gone full tilt in the other direction. This baby that this woman has had is probably taking up a lot of her time. She's probably tired. This is a great excuse not to have sex. She probably doesn't mind at all. But what she is doing is having an unhealthy power over him. And we also teach people how to treat us. So he's allowing her to treat him that way. He's basically giving her conditions. I won't have sex with you unless you have a vasectomy. Now, I imagine she's over 40, and her chances are, by this stage, her chances of having a baby, her fertility has decreased. So it's not that high anyway. That said, he really should be educated on a vasectomy, not because it's the only way he's ever going to have sex again, because that's a very unhealthy communication between the two of them. But if he has a fear around it, he needs to actually speak to a doctor about the reality of a vasectomy. So it's actually less invasive. It's a 20 to 30 minute procedure. It can be done in an office or a clinic. It's done by a medical doctor, a urologist. So there's some no scalpel vasectomies. There are vascular implants. So it's actually a pretty simple procedure. You go back to work in a day or two. You have to avoid heavy lifting. Here's the kicker that might be good for him. You can resume sexual intercourse as soon as you're comfortable, usually in less than a week. So you can still get your partner pregnant, though. So there's going to have to be another form for about 2 or 3 months after the vasectomy, or 10 to 20 ejaculations over a shorter period of time. So because it takes a little while for the sperm count to go down to 0. So there's a number of issues here. Education, power, control, intimacy, trust. There's lots of issues here. What is the alternative? Why won't she use birth control? And I'm not saying that she has to. I think a vasectomy, it's a fairer procedure than a woman having a tubal ligation. It's less invasive. So there are a lot of issues there. But if the relationship continues on this path, this is what they're going to set up as the way that they communicate. And it's not good. She's already gotten a child when he didn't want one. So he needs to look at himself and say, why is it that I'm allowing these things to happen, that I'm allowing somebody to have unhealthy power over me?
And I totally agree, because we talked about this as well, about a couple that I mentioned to you, where he was doing the controlling thing out of making her insecure and not being very supportive. And basically she has a lack of self-esteem because of it. And the one thing you said is, as long as she doesn't change, he won't change. So she has to change. And this sounds like the same thing.
That's right. You can never get anybody else to change. Only when you change does the other person change. It seems like a bizarre concept, but it's true. She knows she can get whatever she wants from her husband, this other woman, around the vasectomy, through this method she has of controlling him. And he will tolerate no sex for a year. He's standing his ground a little bit by not having the vasectomy. But there's a much healthier way to communicate about this. And so she's saying, I don't want any more children. What is she actually saying here? But he needs to say, okay, I do not want to have a vasectomy after being well informed about it, because there are very few risks. There's some bleeding, leakage of sperm, inflammation, so there are some risks, and often vasectomies are reversible. But, again, she's shutting down his sex life. And is that fair to impose fidelity on somebody you love because for some reason, you don't want to have sex? Is this just a great excuse for a woman who no longer feels like having sex, who has low sexual desire, because she knows he's never going to do it? I mean, we don't know. Who knows? But he has to say, do I never want to have sex again? Or, is this type of relationship? And there's probably many other examples in their relationship that underscores this type of behavior. So he needs to take a look at this and say he's not going to stand for it anymore.
Well, I think he has to put his foot down, but I think this is probably very common in relationships. And when the man or the woman decides to go outside the relationship because they're saying, well, I don't want to have any more sex, but we still want fidelity. And then when the man or the woman goes outside the relationship because of no sex, he or she is the worst person in the world.
That's right. You always have to look at why the cheating occurred, why the infidelity occurred. What's the reason? There's always an issue in the relationship. As I say, there's many ways we have access to cheating today, through social media, through work. A lot more women are working outside of the home these days, so a lot more in the workplace. Very common place to meet somebody. And many times you can have those offers. It's when you say, if things are not going great at home, you're more likely to say, okay, I'm going to dive in here. If things are going great at home, you're much less likely to enter those waters.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important that sex is a vital aspect of your intimate relationship, and that it's as important as the finances, as the children, as any other part, as the house you live in. In fact, sometimes it's more important than any of those things. And if you're demonstrating to your children, because you want your children to have a healthy marriage and a healthy, intimate life, and so you're demonstrating to your children when a couple is intimate and loving and touch each other and, have sex together, because sex has health benefits. It improves mood, reduces headaches, helps with vaginal lubrication and elasticity for women. There lowers blood pressure, decreases stress. There's so many health benefits. And so you can theoretically be a happier couple if you're having sex. But there's always this elephant in the room if you're not. There's this underlying stress, especially for men, that want to have sex and are not having their sexual needs met by women. And the same for women who have higher sexual desire. They can feel unloved and undesirable, unattractive to the men in their lives. So that sex is so important, and it there are so many tentacles that come from great sex and a great intimate life.
And that's very important. And I think with everything that's gone, because we're the alternative media and the way the powers that be and the way society and Hollywood is, people can be ashamed, as you say, they have certain opinions of their own body, and don't want to show their own body off because they feel that, if they're a few pounds overweight or for whatever reason. And we see all these, fantastic models and movies of actresses and everything else, and it's a false reality that's out there. And I think people have to realize that we have to get back to who we really are, and love and respect for each other is so important, and to be able to talk about sex candidly and say what you like and what you don't like, because if we can get to that stage in a relationship, then it's going to be a dynamite relationship. I think that's where we have to get, and everybody we all need to wake up to that. One of the things I have here, and I just wanted to mention, was that years ago, you remember Dr. Ruth on the TV, and she'd always talk about a sex therapist and relationships. And what I remember of Dr. Ruth is she was always saying about how to get your man interested in sex. Now, to be honest with you, I felt that very sexist, because this day this day and age anyway, there's a lot of house husbands out there, there's a lot of men out there who are interested, who want to make the effort, but the women aren't interested, which is what we went through. And I think that should be leveled now. I think that should be leveled because there's no such thing as black and white. I think there's so much grey area now because of so many different scenarios regarding relationships.
Absolutely. You know, it's that couple's issue. And it can change over time because we're in long-term relationships, living longer. I have a couple in my clinical practice, late 30s, 3 children, beautiful house, great jobs, both stunningly gorgeous. And not that has anything to do with anything, but you would think that they were having the best sex ever with each other. She's married to this man, and they're not. He pays no attention to her whatsoever. She's always the one dressing up, making the sexual advances, trying to make sex important, and he doesn't respond. And recently, she has fallen in love with another woman. She said she has never, just the attraction was overwhelming. Sexual attraction is involuntary, and it's important that people remember that, because that also, if you're married and you're not having sex at home, with your husband and or your wife, and he or she is heading out to the office, there is a very good chance that he may be or she may be attracted to somebody else, and it's involuntary, and you never know who that's going to be. When women say to me, I'll never cheat, and they judge other women for cheating, I say, you can never say that, because somebody could come along and you could think, it was somebody I never thought I'd ever be attracted to. I had a woman who was attracted to the arborist that they had hired. He drove a motorcycle. She was always a good girl. He drove a motorcycle. He was fully tattooed. She said he was the last person on the planet she ever thought she would be attracted to. And of course, he was someone that she'd never even met in life, but there was this sort of wild girl inside of her that was never allowed to come out. So I think that it's definitely a two-way street, sometimes a three-way street. Sometimes people bring other people into the relationship, or they open up the relationship to meet their sexual needs. So there's lots of different ways where having sex today, but it's all secret and it's all taboo. And once we are open and honest with ourselves and each other, I think that's at least a start on having the best sex we can have in our marriages and relationships.
I think one of the statistics I came across as well, and this is common, and which I've come across anyway, 56% of women like the thug. They like the tough guy. And
love the bad boy, absolutely.
The bad boy. And 44% of women like the intellectual. Now, I'd like to think that the 44% of women who like the intellectual probably had the bad boy and thought, you know what, that was a bad mistake. But maybe it's going back to Neanderthal man, that they see this thug and they think, yeah, he looks healthy, he's going to protect me, I want to have his babies. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, the bad boy is fun. The bad boy is charming generally. The bad boy is generally good looking. The bad boy can lure women in. The bad boy has the ability to overtake a woman. It's sort of it can be in line with a woman's sexual fantasies, which is very normal and very healthy. That they were perhaps expected to be with the intellect, and but it's a whole lot more fun. It may not be as steady and stable with the bad boy, because he may be on to the next one. But you'll have, there's something to be said about a peaceful life and not a whole lot of trouble. So, there's attraction for both, but, so there are reasons that a woman will be attracted to either one of them.
Interesting.
At different times in their life as well. It changes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And men are the same. You'll meet the girl that you'd never take home to your parents and you'd have a great time. Then you'd end up going out with the girl that you get married to. And then when you get married and you settle down, you have kids, you think back to the girl that you did go out where you had a great time with. That happens. That's a regular thing. Right.
Absolutely.
We have a few minutes left, and Steve has a couple of questions there.
Yeah, I have a question here from Joan. Well, it's not so much a question, it's more of a something that happened to Joan, and she's just wondering, Maureen, what your take on it is, or maybe if you could comment. But Joan said she once had a dream that she had a penis. She says she was very upset, almost to the point of crying. She spoke to a friend who was a healer, and her friend smiled and said to Joan, "You are too kind and you need to wake up your masculine side." I'm just wondering, she's just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, to be completely honest, I don't think dreams matter one hill of beans. I don't think there's anything unusual about dreaming that one had a penis. And I don't really think it means a whole lot, and I wouldn't put a whole lot of, now that's the practical side of me. Dreams are great. It may indicate that you're sleeping well, sleeping deeply, going through all of the stages. But I don't think that it means anything. She can take that if she wants, and that she's too nice, and being too nice in life, can, as we've discussed in the past, can get you walked all over, or can, especially women, when women tend to be nurturers, mothers, maternal, but it can actually be depleting if you're too nice and you're always being the one giving. So, if she feels she has to pull back on that a bit, then go for it. That's fine as well. But I really don't think there's, it holds a lot of water, that dream.
What do you think, of all this, talk about men having to find their feminine side, the feminization of men, really? What's your take on that? Do you find that that's a bit disturbing, or should we be looking to be finding our feminine side?
It depends what people define as the feminine side. Does it mean be a bit softer, be a bit gentler, be a bit kinder, don't abuse women? Then sure, find your feminine side. Must we embrace, our feminine side as men? Must men, embrace the feminine side? Not necessarily. Women can help men evolve today, I think. But, I think it's, it really goes back to defining it. So does it mean trying to understand women better, trying to be a better man, whatever that means? And I think, abuse of women is so common today. And even look at the U.S. election and look at how brutal men are about the Hillary Clinton. Just the things that they say about her with absolutely no regard for a woman or the women in their lives, their daughters, their wives. They're calling this woman, the B word. They're every other name in the book. It's the sexual abuse, the court cases. We've certainly had a number here in Canada, a number of court cases where rapists have been let off, where judges have said to women, couldn't you have just kept your knees closed, and then that way he wouldn't have raped you? Couldn't you have sat your bottom in the sink, in the basin, so to prevent this from happening to you? Constantly referring, negatively to the victim and intimating that she perhaps brought this on. So, that's the feminine side that I think men need to gain. They need to actually put an end to the violence against women. They need to collectively, because it actually impacts the sex in their marriage. Sexual abuse of little girls and little boys will actually lead to no sex in a marriage, because those people have anxiety disorders that are lifelong. They will hate sex, find it dirty. So that's the only feminine side. I think men need to stand up for women, not tear them down, not be afraid of women. That we have a woman who is seeking the highest office in the most powerful land, and the reaction from men is appalling. She's the only one qualified, the only one, and we look at Trump, and even women are behind Trump. He is a sexist, misogynist. He's been horrific about disabled people, women, and we have women who are actually for Trump. So when we worship men and put men on this pedestal, we have to actually level the playing field here and say, men need to stand up and say enough is enough. And that's the only feminine side, I think, that we need from men.
Okay, we have one more question for you, and then we'll be able to let you go, unfortunately. But Steve, over to you.
Yeah, last question from Ray on People's Internet Radio, and Ray is wondering, some men, Ray has said, marry porn workers or sex workers and seem to be quite happy. How unusual or usual is this?
That they marry porn stars or sex workers?
Yes.
A lot of them are married. Many of them are married. And, as long as they can compartmentalize and they can see it, many people are quite happy about it. Some of those porn stars or sex workers actually may have low sexual desire in their own relationship. But if a couple can say, this is my job, this is what I'm bringing home this amount of bacon, then, couples can be fine with it. It has a lot of potential for troubles in the relationship, but I've certainly heard many couples who are happy with women doing that kind of work and being married to those women.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Maureen, it's been fantastic information. Thanks a lot for coming on. I definitely think there's a part 2 in the bag there that we're gonna have to do in a few months' time, because it's such a massive subject to talk about. And I'm sure after people listen to this show, if we say we do a part 2, there'll be loads of questions for part 2. But a big, big thank you for coming on to the show. It's been brilliant how the universe put us in touch with each other indirectly, thanks to Paul again. And just, getting the subject out there and talking about it and getting the realism as what's going on rather than reality, rather than the Hollywood and the glamour magazines. It's been fantastic. A big thank you for coming on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact details where people can find you, and they can pop to your website. Steve.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Maureen, it's been great. And as Alan said, there's so many more questions that we could have asked. People are still actually putting questions up on the chat room, and apologies that we don't get to ask the rest of those, but we do have another segment lined up. Your website, Maureen, backtothebedroom.ca, is quite interesting, and your book is actually there, and I'm guessing it's going to be a bestseller because sex and health, why one can't come without the other. So obviously we'll give that a little plug as well. Is there any other ways people can find out more about you? Obviously there's your TED Talks as well. Anything else?
If they just go to YouTube to view the TEDx talk, which is just Google my name in there, Maureen McGrath, TEDx Stanley Park, comes up, or they can say the Maureen McGrath on YouTube, no sex, marriage, masturbation, loneliness, cheating, and shame. Or they can email me any questions, sextalk@cknw.com. That's sextalk@cknw.com. Or they can listen to my show, tune into the show, cknw.com. Listen live, or it's the Sunday Night Sex Show on CKNW. But if they just go to cknw.com, I guess 8 hours ahead, it's at 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. But there's also a podcast there as well, so they can listen to past shows. So,
brilliant.
Yeah. Or just Google my name.
Brilliant stuff. Maureen, that's fantastic. Thank you a lot for coming on, and much appreciated, and I'm sure we're going to do a part 2. Just stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to play a bit of music, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
And we're back. Yes, good information there from Morin McGrath. As she said, just go on to either YouTube or your search engine and just type in her name, and you will find lots of information. Her website, backtothebedroom.ca, is available there, and you can get a book there if you are interested.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, now, we did say we would talk about the charity, and we have interviews by the volunteers of the charity You're Not Alone. And basically what happened was, on Friday night, the volunteers all had, so it's all very well organised, and they all had high-vis jackets on. And I'm sure people, when they walk past and seen the volunteers with the high-vis jackets on, they probably thought that these people were getting paid. And maybe what I should have done is ask people walking past and say, do you see these people there? Do you think they're getting paid a salary and that's their job? And I'm sure the people would have turned around and said, yeah, that's probably their job, that's what they have to do. Not realising that they were just volunteering and they weren't getting paid at all. It's just the goodness of their own heart to actually help these people. Now, one of the questions was that if they didn't turn up, and I have asked on the interview, if they didn't turn up, if they decided, and they were quite rightly could decide that one night they might go, you know what, I'm going to stay home and watch TV. I'm not going to go into Dame Street tonight and help the homeless. And they could be in their right to do that because they're volunteers at the end of the day. The question is, what do you think would happen? And obviously the feedback was that people would starve, and they would starve. After seeing what happened on Friday, and it's a fantastic lifeline for the homeless, you know, and it's not only food, but there's clothes there as well. And it gives them, the homeless, their dignity and their self-respect as well. Now, before we play the actual interview, I just want to mention a few names because it's worthwhile mentioning. You have Marie, Mick and Kim with the red hair, and their father and daughter, and Phil, Billy, Anne and Linda, Chris, Amanda, Neil and Dave. And also, we have to remember that the people who are volunteering, in their own lives, they have their own set of problems as well. And so he found that speaking to a few of them, like Marie is a full-time carer for her dad, and, you know, going out and doing a night with the charity is actually a night out for her. You know, it's not like going out, getting drunk and, you know, going to the pub and having a great time. Going out because she's caring for her father, you know, 24/7. And so having the night out with the charity is actually a night out. And, you know, although it's great and what they do is fantastic, I wouldn't class that as going as a night out. You know, I mean, you think you'd go to a restaurant or go and see a band or something like that. That would be more like a night out. But, you know, Marie's happy doing that. Now, and the other people, obviously, Amanda I know is a big volunteer and interested in supporting Dolphin Rescue and a charity that take care of that. And Linda is an activist, and I know she was going. She in the past she'd taken photographs of the way horses were being treated in the circus, and I think she got a smack in the head by an iron bar by one of the people for taking the photos. So all these people in their own way are activists and doing their own thing, but obviously they come together as a great team. And this is every Friday and Saturday night that, not every Friday and Saturday, every Friday and Sunday that they come together week on week. And then I'd kind of say in all weathers, like the weather was really nice on Friday. It was quite warm and it was great. And there's people walking around in t-shirts and stuff like that. But imagine when it's snowing and when it's icy and it's cold and you're not getting paid. I mean, how many of us would actually do it week on week? Every Friday, every Sunday, turning up and doing that and not getting paid for it. You know, it's a thankless job, but we'd like to say thanks to the people who do it because they do a fantastic job, very professional, very well organised, and it's brilliant. And it's great to see that the donations that we raised through OYM, that the sleeping bags and the food that we raised, you know, is being well used. And as I say, you'll hear on the interview, what's been said. Now, we got news in the other day as well, real disturbing news. Ashleen contacted us on Facebook and said that a woman's daughter that she knows had been waiting on the bus when she saw 4 young men approach a homeless guy sleeping with one of them, and one of them actually started to urinate on the homeless guy right in front of her eyes, with the others just looking and laughing. And without thinking, she ran over screaming at them to stop, and basically they gave her some abuse and ran off. And I think that is diabolical for the kind of society we live in. The poor man, I think he was 67, he was homeless in a doorway, and one of the guys went up and did that, and the other 3 laughing. I mean, that's just sick. It really is sick, isn't it, Steve? It
is. I mean, I bet you those 4 lads, I bet you they all went home to a nice comfortable bed that night. I
bet they did. But you never know, karma might kick in. Anyway, here's the interview we have Ashleen, Mick and Anne telling us about their experiences and what they do for the charity You're Not Alone. Right, well, we're here with Ashleen Lowe from the We're Not Alone charity in Dublin at the moment, down at Dame Street. And we're just having a quick chat with Ashleen. We're just waiting on certain people to turn up, apparently, for the tables, and we have a car full of food ready to go for the homeless. But I just want to get a kind of an idea on what is going to happen tonight and what the plan of attack is, because I think this happens every Friday. But actually, give us an idea what, you know, loads of people turned up from the You're Not Alone charity with fluorescent jackets on and everything getting ready to go. But give us an idea of what's going to happen now.
Well, usually now we're waiting on Mick to come. Mick has our van that here's Mick now. He's actually starting to pull in now. So basically now what we're going to do is we're going to take out all the tables, gas stoves, 40-litre flasks out of the van and start setting up on the street. And we set up our street kitchen Friday and Sunday nights, and we feed nearly 300, maybe sometimes 400 people per night that are homeless and in need of hot food, clothing, toiletries, and maybe just a friendly ear to listen to them for an hour and have a chat or whatever, the case may be. We wouldn't be able to do this work only for the people in Meath and Dublin and all over the country, really. People are pulling together and giving a lot of donations. They give clothing, shoes, food, toiletries, all them types of things, and that's what keeps our group functioning.
Fantastic. And tonight now, this happens, I think you said this happens every Friday. It's incredible what an operation to do every Friday. Obviously, the people that turn up here, the volunteers, what's their background? Obviously, they're working for the same charity as yourself, but it's amazing that they give up their time and they volunteer to do this.
Well, we're a non-profit organisation, so we rely on people's goodwill. And with people's goodwill, we all just got together as a group and decided, let's do this. We'll go out and we'll feed and clothe and help the homeless as much as we can. And thank God, with some of the people that have been donating on your programme, like 210 sleeping bags means you're saving 210 lives. That's the whole thing.
That's excellent.
So it's 210 lives that will be saved with them sleeping bags. Plus also the supermarket sweeps that I've been on with yourself and the amount of food that had been donated, and like that, it has got us through the whole summer, really, them donations of food. And the main thing, the sleeping bags, not only the food is very important, but the sleeping bags are lifesavers, because when we pack up and leave the street, then people have to go to and find a doorway basically to sleep in and try and keep warm for the night. And like that, sometimes it's very hard to get the donations of sleeping bags because they're not cheap, they're costly. But we've had so many people who have donated from their own pocket, and a lot of people that do donate, and I can't stress this enough, they don't have it themselves. So it makes it more important to us to come out and do our bit.
Brilliant stuff. Well, what we'll do is, after we finish tonight, we'll be here probably for a couple of hours, a few hours. Yeah. After we do sort out things tonight, we'll probably have another quick interview, and we'll just have a chat about how it went and the experience of being here in Dublin on a Friday night. I mean, it's very busy, very touristy, loads of people around, unbelievable. So we'll see how it goes. But thanks, Ashley, and we'll touch base in a couple of hours.
No problem.
Okay, well, we're here with Mick. Mick is another volunteer with You're Not Alone charity, and Mick is the man with the van and the tables, and he does everything on his side. But I'm just going to have a quick chat with Mick and just get a take on what he sees going on tonight down in Dame Street with the homeless and what he does on behalf of the charity. I know he's the man with the van, but I'm sure he does a hell of a lot more than just having the van. Tell us what you do, Mick, for the charity.
I do most of the running around for the charity. Myself and my wife, we go down to Ashland and once a week, maybe once every second week in Trim, to pick up all the supplies that she has been donated. I basically get the van ready the 2 nights a week with my wife, and we fill it with clothes, sleeping bags, food, tables, water. Sunday's my day. I make the coddle or the stew or whatever on a Sunday night. Then basically that's what I do for the homeless with the van, But we do a lot on the background side of it, where we're going 7 days a week, like collecting and delivering stuff, as well as that, if one of the homeless actually get flat, my wife sorts out a load of hampers to bring in to the people that are really struggling, that have only got a place, like she'll do them a big food hamper and toiletries and things like that, you know.
Okay, so why Mick? Why you, Mick?
Just basically see the way the homeless have struggled for years on the street and walking by them, and I said, well, we're not rich ourselves, but we said we might as well give something back, you know, out there to somebody that is actually struggling. And it's very sad when you see the children coming along, and just basically it, you know.
And we have a mixed group of people coming, I noticed. Mostly men, for some reason. Do you know why that is?
Haven't got a clue. We have in the whole night we might do 10 women, but the 90 to 100% actually is men. And I honestly do not know. Maybe the wife has thrown them out, I don't know, but basically it is nearly all men, as you could see for yourself.
That's interesting that statistically, like, it's mostly men. Now, tell me something. What would happen if Mick and his wife and the volunteers didn't do what they do? If you didn't turn up here every Friday, because you have a full-time job as well, and you just said to me earlier that you were driving for 11 hours, and you came up here tonight and you're doing the work for the charity, what would happen to these people?
Well, if we weren't here on Friday night, they'd starve. Simple, they get nothing. Like, as you've seen yourself with the clothes, it's like a jumble sale there, the way they dive into it, because they're for free. And if we weren't here tonight, they'd have nothing. Nothing from early afternoon when they get their dinner in one of the other shelters along. They have nothing after that, which is 1 o'clock, I think. They actually have no food, nothing until we arrive at 7:30.
Wow. And what's your take on, surely the government should be doing something about this. What's your take on that?
The government should be, but also Dublin City Council should be doing something about it. There's lots of hostels, or lots of hostels actually closing down, and there is also hotels closing down that they could actually put homeless people into. But no, they don't, because to the government, they actually treat the homeless like dirt on their shoe.
I've noticed that there was a Garda van driving around a couple of times, and the side of the van was open, and there was probably about 4 guards sitting in. Is that a regular occurrence, and why are they driving around?
Well, it's everybody asks us the same question. On a Friday night in Temple Bar, we'd have a lot of youngsters drinking, and that is actually the public order unit, and there's actually about 16 guards in the back of that, and what they actually do is they move the youngsters out of Temple Bar, will not allow them in. But sometimes they give the homeless people will actually run away when they see them coming, because as everybody knows, the homeless get into trouble. They have family lives and bad lives and the whole lot. So that is basically why the public order unit are here every single Friday, and maybe Sunday night too.
Okay, and have you seen any trouble yourself while you've been here?
Tonight, no.
No, just in general.
General, yes. General, you can actually, a row could actually break off fairly quickly with the homeless people. It's because of drink or drugs or whatever related. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be that. You just have to move the wrong way at the table and there could be a kick off. That's why on our group, You're Not Alone, we always have, if you notice, we've always have the men outside the table, bar one that is doing the close. The men are there. If a row breaks off between them, is the men line up across the table, how the women aren't hurt, behind the table, and it's shut down until such time as that row breaks away.
Brilliant. So you have it well organised. Now, I noticed that you have the clothes on the table and the shoes are on the ground, but you've only one shoe on the ground.
Yeah, we've only one shoe on the ground, and the reason why we do that is because we have chancellors that come along. We've actually moved on a fella tonight that we've only found out that he is a foreign national. He actually has 4 shops running in the Dublin city centre, and what he does is he takes the stuff and sells it in his shop.
There you go. So no moral conscience from that person at all. Just feeding off the homeless people, really.
Well, that's it, Jay. They're chancing their arm. Like, we do get a lot of people like that, that'll come and chance their arm, and the way we think of that is, well, you're robbing somebody that really needs it out of it. So they're normally there when we come. They work in a gang, and the reason why they're there when they come, because all the good clothes would be there when we come first, all the really, really good clothes. Like, I'm not saying everything's not good, it's all good as far as we're concerned, and thanks to Aislinn Lowe she gets 90%, maybe even 100% of our clothing, but they take the best stuff until we found out that they were selling it, and then we kept an eye, and what we do, we kept an eye, and we seen that it was worked as a gang.
Okay, now you set up here just underneath the Central Bank in Dame Street. Have you had any issues with the bank?
We've had, yes, we've had issues with Central Bank because they're beside the bin across from us now. There is actually a hole with slats on it. That is actually an air duct, and we used to chuck our soup down it. But if we'd left over soup when we were closed at the end of the night, or the lads, if they didn't like their soups or whatever, they'd chuck it down there. They got into trouble. We got into trouble with them over it, so we stopped doing that. And now what they tried to do was force us to get public liability insurance, which I didn't think it was a good idea, because at the present time, if a homeless person falls at our table, it means they could claim off us if they knew that we had public liability insurance. Plus, as we are a non-profitable charity, it means that we would have a big expense on our hands.
I think you're doing great work, Mick, and tonight again I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing with the people. Thanks from OYM anyway, and all the listeners, thanks for what you're doing, much appreciated.
And thanking you for coming up tonight and looking to see what we actually do, so we could prove a point to different people that this is actually what we do.
Brilliant. Cheers, Mick. Okay, we're here with Anne from the charity You're Not Alone. Anne is one of the volunteers here in Dame Street helping out the homeless people. And we spoke to Aislinn earlier on, and Aislinn was telling us all about the charity. Can you tell us how it works for you and what drives you to come in here every week? I think every Friday, I think Sunday as well, you're in here. And just tell us a bit about what's going on tonight, and as I say, what drives you?
Well, I just believe I kind of feel it's time that I pay back or give back in, and I'm a fair believer in people helping each other out. And if it's only a couple of hours a week, maybe a little bit of running around, cooking a stew or making a curry, that it's going to a very worthwhile cause. We're helping people who are desperate. They're at their worst, they're on the streets, and I just like to come in and do a bit, and that's what drives me, really.
Okay, so why you? Why Anne to do it?
I don't know why me. I suppose I'm always been aware of the injustice in society. I'm involved in the Irish Housing Network. I believe that some people just don't get a fair shot. Particularly notice that men, young single men, anyone with kind of alcohol abuse problems, substance abuse problems, are really being left just to manage on their own devices, and people aren't getting the rights, they aren't getting the chances or the opportunities. And what you actually have here is a cycle of poverty, and more people are getting pushed into that cycle of poverty. And there is no way of breaking out of it, because once you hit the streets, like, you really have hit rock bottom. And as far as the authorities like Dublin City Council and Fingal County Council, South Dublin County Council and DLR, they're not serving the purpose that they're here for. They're not housing people, and they're certainly not looking after. I think Alan will confirm that the majority of the people who use our tables are men, and they're usually single men, and they really are the bottom of the pile. Like, even if they went in to get housed tomorrow and went on a homeless list, the chances of them ever getting housed are zero. They're just not going to be homed. If they are homed, it's in a hospital, and there's no, they call it emergency accommodation, and it's one of the real big issues nowadays, is there are no minimum standards in these hostels. There's no minimum standards in emergency accommodation. So you could go into a room, you might have no privacy, They might have no personal washing facilities. You certainly would be very, very lucky if you had somewhere where you could wash your clothes, and zero chance of you being in a place where you can cook a hot meal. So that's what we give. We give hot food. It's cooked. We cook it from donations and from ourselves as well too. My family would give me money, or sometimes they'd buy me food and we cook from that. We also are very lucky that we're part of the Tesco Food Cloud, and we reuse everything that they gave us. Like, for example, last week I made a turkey stew and every single thing was donated. Everything that was in that pot was donated. And so in that way, what you're actually offering people is basic hot food. We also do clothes. Clothes are also in a desperate need. So if you think about you're out in the streets and it lash rain like it did the other day, you have nowhere to wash those clothes. You have nowhere to dry those clothes. So, like, people would come up to us and they wouldn't even have a pair of dry socks. So we'd have a huge demand for shoes and socks and jeans. Men's clothes is the biggest demand that we have for. We do have women coming to the table, but they are in a minority. I'd say it's probably maybe 80% to 20%. Probably 80% men, but I think...
And just looking at the setup here, you have it well organised. You have one side of the tables with the food and the other side with the clothes, and obviously all the volunteers around. I mean, what would happen to these people if the charity wasn't here?
Well, there are a fair few super runs around Dublin City now, and they all kind of work together, so that's nearly every night of the week is covered. I don't know, on a personal level, I've had people say if it wasn't for yous, and we've seen people who have turned their lives around, who maybe have cleaned up substance abuse, or who have gotten a long-term emergency place in a home, and they will come back to us and they'll say it wasn't for yous. And sometimes it's just actually to stand there and to talk to somebody and just actually have a chat with them. Like, there was a girl there now a couple of weeks ago, and she's a regular at the table, but I hadn't seen her for a while, and when she came up, she looked really, really sick. Like, she really looked bad. There was another guy who had epilepsy, and he had been mugged, and his medication was taken. And he had, I suppose, mental health issues. One of our volunteers that accompanied him up to James Street Hospital sat there for the 2 hours with him. Now, unfortunately, the man's mental health didn't allow him to stay there and engage with somebody. But like any kind of support, like just to actually listen to what they're saying, listen to what people are saying. And one thing that you just cannot do is make any judgments on people. You just have to have that in your head. You won't make judgments on people.
Okay, saying that, and I totally agree with you, but I was talking to one of your volunteers, and it seems to me that there are some people who actually don't have a moral conscience, and one of your volunteers said there are some people who turn up and actually take the clothes and go off and sell them and give them to another shop rather than actually them clothes going to the homeless, which I just find is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. We noticed that there was that was happening, that people were coming along, so we got far stricter on the clothes, insofar as, like, you get one pair of jeans, you get one pair of socks, one pair of shoes. So to a certain level, we can't police what people do beyond what happens at the table. We certainly would stop anyone taking an excess amount of clothes, and as regards like main items of clothes, like a pair of shoes, a jacket, a trousers and a top, that would be it. But if we saw somebody like taking loads of clothes, we immediately stopped them, and they won't be allowed to take any more clothes. Just saying there now, we can see there's an elderly man just after approaching the table there. He brings up 2 massive pizzas every single Friday night. He does that. It probably makes him feel good, but he came up to us before and he asked what could he do. We don't ask for money, but we would prefer if people made the donations of food. So this man, every Friday night, he brings up those 2 huge pizzas.
That's brilliant. Now, we are doing the interview in the car for the simple reason is, and Anne will tell you, that we have seagulls and pigeons and birds everywhere, because where there's food, it's incredible. And the cheek of the seagulls and the pigeons, they just don't seem to care, and they're all over the place. How do you manage them?
Well, I'd say we're probably looking at very stormy seas. We don't normally have that many seagulls. But I mean, it's definitely, there's a lot of them here tonight. And you know what seagulls are like anywhere there's food. And you can see actually some people are actually feeding them bits of food. So I suppose at the end of the day, we're all just looking to be looked after, whether we're an ugly seagull or not. I don't, no offence to any seagull lovers, they wouldn't be my birds.
That's okay. So how long will this go on now, Anne? Probably for a couple of hours. When will you start packing up, or is there a time limit that you put on it?
Well, what happens is we usually go till about 10:30. Now, generally we run out of hot food around the 9 o'clock mark, 9:15. We get 2 deliveries. We go and collect the food from Tesco's. And we don't know what we'll get, but they're very, very generous around here. Both the Tesco's, the one here in Dame Street, and there's one down in Tampa Bar. So we get a lot of bread, and we get like the salad bar, and that, I mean, everyone loves that, like making up rolls and that. So we go till we literally run out of food, and that's what we do.
And do you ever get any trouble from the people that turn up?
We do, yeah. I'll be telling you a lie if we said otherwise. Saying that, like, we have a very strong crew, and there's a good, strong, I mean, I'm not being sexist by saying it, but there's a good, strong male presence. The rules of the tables have been long established, and you'll find that if somebody starts messing, most of the other homeless people will stand back, or they'll correct them, or they'll tell them to behave. We have had, maybe, since I've been doing it about a year, maybe about 3 instances where the table was closed. So basically what that is, we just close down the table till any messing or anything is over and done with. But physically, no, we haven't. I have never seen anything like. I've never seen anyone be assaulted as such. I've seen homeless people fight among themselves, and sometimes that can happen, especially over the clothes if somebody wants something somebody else has. But we maintain the system, and we're very consistent with it, and we don't kind of make favourites. So, and I think most people know that this is the way the table works.
I have to say, this is the first time I've come in, and I think it's well organised. You're doing a brilliant job. So just to let people know, in what way can they help you? Just to say to them again exactly what you're looking for.
Well, as regards clothes, definitely men's clothes, jeans, jackets, shoes, runners, absolutely. Everyone needs them. As I said, if you get soaked, there goes your shoes and runners. As regards to food-wise, we need things like curry sauces, because we make curries, or soups, to make the soups, rices, pasta even, and any other dried foods like biscuits and sweets and chocolate, like they go down a bomb. They absolutely go down a bomb. If you put sweets out on the table, you have to put them out bit by bit, because they just be wiped away, like.
And of course, the people can contact the charity. You're Not Alone on Facebook. And do you have a contact number or email?
There is a contact number. It's actually on the Facebook page. I don't know it off by heart myself, but there is a contact number. So if you go on to You're Not Alone, if you're looking for the page, it's YOU_RE, You're Not Alone, and there is a phone number on that. So if you want to contact the page, or even message the page, and our volunteers are spread out around Dublin, so. And we have Aisling in Meath, who does a fantastic job down there, absolutely brilliant. I mean, the amount of the generosity of people in Meath is just brilliant. The clothes, the food that comes up. Like, we'd be delighted when we see Aisling coming.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll be putting this out on the show and let people know as well. Thanks, Anne.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Right, okay, there you go. There are the interviews with Aisling, Mick and Anne. Now, we had planned to do a follow-up interview with Aisling at the end of the night, but it was very late and we didn't get around to do it. But needless to say, everything went brilliantly and very, very professional. And nobody judges anyone. They just go and do the job and help out the homeless people there. And it's brilliant work that they do. And fair play to Tesco's as well for donating the food to the charity. Every little helps, as they say.
Yeah, and I have to say, just listen to them there, and I mean, what can you say? I mean, think that there are people out there, and we know they are. But I mean, I wasn't there on the night. You were there, and just listen to that. I mean, it built up like a mental picture, and what you were telling me earlier, I can actually visualize it, and it sounds like there's a lot of love in around the tables, but it also sounds like there's a lot of heartache as well, and a lot of pain, where people have to, as you say, give up their own time to go in and do this when they shouldn't have to. If we had a government that was worth its salt, then well, maybe homelessness wouldn't exist in the first place, or at least maybe the government would have measures in place to look after and take care of these people and give them a roof over their head. But unfortunately, it just happens to be the time we live in, I suppose.
And not everybody, by the way, is drinking and on substance abuse. I mean, there are people who don't go near alcohol or drugs and they're just homeless because of their circumstances. So I want to clarify that as well. That's very important. But they do a fantastic job. I mean, how many of us would actually do it every Friday and Sunday, religiously every week? Very few people, and these people turn up and do this all the time. Now, there is great camaraderie, and they do have a bit of a laugh, and it's not all doom and gloom. They do have they're a tight team, and they work well together, and they have a bit of ribbing, as you do over here in Ireland, with each other, and that kind of lightens up the mood, and it's great to see, and it's just brilliant work that they do, so fair play to all of them. Now, obviously, I hate to mention the dirty word of donations, but our donation pot is beginning to look a bit empty these days, and for OYM, and there's a lot more stuff that we want to do, and we can't do at the moment because, as I say, things are a bit tight. And I know we hate asking for donations because things are very tight, but what we'd like to do is, if you do get some donations into OYM, that maybe what we'll do is we'll do another food run for You're Not Alone charity for the winter. And just pop down to Aldi and do that if we can, if we have the donations to do it, because it's really all down to the listeners. I mean, that just kind of proves what the charity do, and the proof is there. We're going to be doing a separate YouTube with some photos, just a handful of photos that I took on the night, and that YouTube video will be on the OYM YouTube channel, probably in the next couple of days when I get that sorted. So that's going to be on there. But if you can afford a couple of quid, whether it's €1 or €2 even, it's all a big help to OEM to support us and do what we do. That's the aim of the game anyway. We'll see what we can do when we have the donations in, but we'll do our best. Now, next week we have Simon Spaniard or White Rabbit, depending. He has multiple names, and Simon's going to be coming on. He has new information. I believe he's going to be coming on with a colleague of his, and he has new information regarding the legal system which he wants to share with us. So that's going to be interesting, because I think he's found out a few, I won't say loopholes, but he's found out a few things which are going to be of interest to us. So that's another good thing to have Simon on. Have you got him planned during the week, Steve?
No plans at the moment. But I just want to say again, as Alan said, I mean, if anyone does want to throw a couple of washers our way to help the homeless, you're not alone. Then, I mean, by all means, just make a donation from the website, and just make it, just stick on the subject that it's for You're Not Alone, and we will ensure that any money's raised does go to where it's needed. Now,
I will say that obviously they prefer getting the likes of food vouchers or clothes rather than money, because they don't like handling money. But what we can do is, if you do donate and send the money in and say it's for them, we can convert them into food vouchers and give them to the charity. So it's no problem doing that. Just make sure that when you do a donation, you say whether it's for OYM or whether it's for the charity. As I say, to do sterling work. And you know what? It gives you a bit of humility, to actually see how lucky we all are that I could come home and go to bed and get into a warm bed, and these people weren't doing that. And we did give out a few sleeping bags on the night, thanks to your donations as well. They're going to keep most of them for the winter, but we did take a couple of photos. We're going to try and get them as well. But we're nearing the end, so thanks everybody for tuning in. Had a great night, great information from Maureen. And if there's any news or anything that of interest, please let us know, and email us on info@oymradio.com. This is myself, Alan James. Take it easy. Have a good week. Stay safe. Bye-bye. Okay, and from myself, Stephen George, I want to say great interview. Thanks to Alan for going out and spending the time with Aisling, Anne and Mick on Friday. Harrowing stories, but good to know that, good work is being done to help those less fortunate than ourselves. I don't think Vin is on PIR this evening. I've seen something earlier. I'm not sure who's in the hot seat. But as I say, if you're listening on the OYM stream, we're going to be disconnecting now. If you want more talk radio, then stay tuned on People's Internet Radio well then, I don't know who's up next, but I'm sure it'll be interesting anyway. Okay, we'll see you all again next week. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Open your mind.